many of you have heard the spiel about how there's no coincidence. The word temple is in our name. The dream came to life here as a home, not just for automotive art, but more importantly for the people who are passionate about them. So developing that community behind the Mach 1 Fund, it has been supremely important for us. We've been at it 5 years. It took many years to build this with Paul and Mark. We hope it's the first of many physical temples, but also the first of many events. And the guys have worked hard. This year we have 30 plus events, be they Tyreside chats like tonight, drive days, multi-day drive days, simulator nights. With your help and feedback, we'll build a fulsome event calendar so we can come together. I often talk about how, not so much my problem because I'm lucky enough to do it with these guys every day, but many of us go to work, no one wants to talk about cars. We go home, no one wants to talk about cars. So we built a temple where we can do exactly that. We can come together, we can tell the truth, we can tell lies, we can do whatever we want in this space of ours. So again, thanks. There's a combination here of Mach 1 investors, some club members, some prospective club members. Hopefully you like what you see tonight. Be gentle. We have the training wheels on, and we're open to feedback and how can we do them better, faster. So again, thanks for your support to date, and I hope this evening is interesting. We've got some great guests from McLaren. Our first event, like I mentioned, is the Tyreside chat with an underlying theme around provenance, that great French word that I like to borrow from art and those parallels to what we do with art collecting. So tonight, Luke's going to be our MC, and we're going to run through a few elements of what makes cars special, their story, the brand, the people, and I keep coming back to the people behind it, and hopefully you find it interesting. And so I'll hand over to Luke, and thanks again, everyone.
If you've been here before and heard Lex, he's getting better, isn't he? He really is. He spent an hour practicing that in front of a mirror this afternoon. He really is getting. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Luke O'Neill. I have the pleasure of being involved with Chrome Temple for many years now, and it's a great way for me to be involved with like-minded enthusiasts. My background, I run an event management company, an automotive event management company. We've been at it now for 26 years. I've had the great pleasure of working with pretty much every major brand across the line, both super luxury and run-of-the-mill. We've worked with everyone from Ford to Ferrari. So I held the role in 2015, I think, or Mark, was it 2015? The first 12C?
Yeah. Yep.
As I was appointed by Ron Dennis as the brand ambassador for McLaren. The most perfect piece of bullshit I have ever said, ever, was when Ron Dennis said to me, Luke, what do you think of my car? And I said, all my clients are asking me, should I buy a 458 McLaren or a McLaren 12? Well, back then it was an MP4 12C. And I said, Ron, I say to them, the McLaren answers the long-term question. If I could only have one supercar, what would it be? And it's the McLaren, Ron. And by the end of that night, he'd given me a brand new 12C to be his brand ambassador. And I said, what does a brand ambassador do? And he goes, I don't know, you tell us. So I literally Google searched brand ambassador. Remember that ad? I can't remember her name. Where the bloody hell are you? Remember that girl in the bikini? All I remember is the bikini. Lara Bingle, right? Lara Bingle. I do remember her name. I just didn't want to sound so obvious. And anyway, she came up and I read all about how she was a brand ambassador for Land Rover. She was driving a fully loaded Range Rover around the eastern suburbs of Sydney. And I thought, well, I don't find that believable at all. I don't want to be Lara Bingle. So I built a little program and I sent it off to McLaren and I said, you need to give me a car. You need to pay all of the expenses. You need to pay the servicing, the fuel, the tyres, the brakes. And I need $1,000 a month to take people out to lunch. And they said, done. So for 12 months, I was a brand ambassador for the 12C, which was the coupe version at the time. Then they released the Spider version. Unfortunately, someone crashed my car. And at that point in time, I had to give it back. But I've maintained that role. Long story short, this is why I'm here. I've done a lot with cars over the years. I'll come out and say it, this is probably my favourite brand. This, to me, a McLaren is how a car should feel, a supercar should feel. In saying that, I'm a massive fan of Bentley, Aston, Ferrari, all these other cars. But the great thing for all of us as car enthusiasts is that it doesn't matter which brand you get involved with. They all do the same thing, just in slightly different ways. And the goal of tonight is to tell stories about McLaren. And those stories are the things that you'll remember, whether or not it's a Ferrari or a Bentley or a McLaren, it doesn't matter. But it's about these cars are great, but they're even better when you can share them with people. And I think that's tonight what we're trying to do, is share some stories. Alongside me is Geordie from McLaren Sydney, relatively new to the brand, but has been with McLaren now for about 18 months, I think. With McLaren Sydney. So by the end of tonight, when we've completely and utterly convinced you to buy a McLaren, he's the bloke that you need to go and see. By the way, you all signed up for a new car when you walked in anyway, so it's a fait accompli. At the end of the table or the couch, is a very good friend of mine, Mark Augner. Now, Mark has been involved with McLaren without doubt from the absolute beginning of McLaren in Australia. So much so that when McLaren started, he was pretty much the only bloke in the country that could fix them. So there was one particular time that Mark, in 1 week, visited 3 different states to fix 4 different cars being flown from state to state to state. There was also a moment in time where I went on holiday to the Kangaroo Valley, dived into a swimming pool with my key in my pocket, and frantically rang Mark and said, fuck, how am I going to deal with this? How do I fix this key? And he taught me the hairdryer trick, where you pull your key apart and you basically dry your key with a hairdryer. He sounded so official when he did it. It actually did work, which was great because I could get home. I got home and promptly put that same key through the washing machine. And that key died. Lara Bingle taught him that. That key died, cost me $1,500. So anyway, Mark has forgotten what most of us know about McLaren, and it's going to be interesting to throw Mark under a couple of buses tonight to tell some stories about the stuff that he's seen and done. And of course, Chris, who is with Chrome Temple, Chris's role is, I don't know, but he looks goddamn handsome, and we all just get lost in his eyes and his beard and all the rest of it. So, you know, when Chris talks, everyone listens, so that's all I do. But listen, thank you. My role is as MC. I'm going to try and keep this thing moving along despite my long-winded introduction, because I know also when Chris and I start talking, it goes on forever, and I don't want to subject you to that boredom. I've got a few notes, so you will forgive me for looking at my little screen. Tonight is a story about cars. It just so happens that we chose McLaren as our first brand. There was no rhyme or reason to it, but probably had something to do with the very 2 special cars we have sitting behind us and another extremely special car that we have sitting just outside. But we're not here to talk about facts about McLaren. We're not spitting out 0 to 100 or anything like that. What we're talking about is stories, and that's what provenance is all about, as Lex suggested. It's stories that are told and retold over decades even, until they become folklore. And one of the things that Lex is very adept with is interpreting that folklore and deciding and trying to find where those cars, where that folklore builds value. Because there's a lot of stories that'll be told tonight that make you think, geez, that's not good. But the outcome of that story was that the car went up in value instead of being worth less, despite the fact that it had certain incidences. And we'll touch on sort of those things. So we're going to share some McLaren stories, the good and the bad. As I said, not just because bad stories are the funniest, but also because they create some of the most treasured experiences with the brand. But anyway, here's a really quick snapshot of McLaren. Relatively new to the supercar market. McLaren Automotive started in 2010. So a lot later, than all of our common knowledge with other supercar brands. But the first car, a lot of people think, was a bit of a legendary car called the F1. That wasn't McLaren's first road car. In fact, back in 1969, Bruce McLaren, the founder of McLaren, after much success in Can-Am racing and almost winning world championships in Formula One, decided that his 700 horsepower Can-Am car should become a road car. So what he did, he took his Can-Am based chassis, put a roof on it, shoved 2 seats in it, put a slightly smaller engine in it, and called it the M6 GT, which became his first, or the progenitor of McLaren Automotive. Unfortunately, his dream of having a fleet of road cars never came to fruition, both through regulations and probably more so due to the fact of his untimely death. But fast forward 25 years after the M6 GT, Gordon Murray comes along, and the story goes that they were coming back from, I can't remember which F1 it was, maybe Spa. They were in the airport. There was Gordon, there was the guy who owned Tag Heuer at the time, and someone else had a conversation in the airport, and Gordon said, what if we build the perfect driver's car? And they literally scribbled some drawings and some notes, and on that flight was born the McLaren F1. 25 years after, Bruce decided to build the first car, and the outcome of the F1 was to build the perfect driver's car, exactly what Bruce wanted to achieve with the M6 GT. Now, fast forward another 30 years from that fateful flight, and all of us sitting in this room tonight, and we're surrounded by modern McLarens, and we realise, well, I realise that we're all now witness to one man's dream, which is building the ultimate driver's car, because we're now surrounded by them. The knowledge, the stories, the pain, the victory over 70 years of McLaren is all instilled in every one of these cars around us. And that's where a great story, a great visionary has built a brand that is now globally recognised, and that we can all jump in and share some stories about our experience with what is an astonishing brand, given that it's only been around for a short period of time. Anyway, let's get into some of our own stories. I'm going to throw my old mate Lex under the bus first. By the way, we don't need to follow any chronological order. We can go 570S, we can go Senna, we can go P1, we can go F1, we can do anything. But I'm going to ask Lex to kick it off, because one of the primary reasons we came up with this idea was one of the cars sitting behind me has an extraordinary story, this exposed carbon P1. So mate, tell us about that.
I will. A couple of quick things on Bruce. I'm not sure if everyone knew he was a Kiwi. And all these cars, I think every single one has the Kiwi engraved in some element in the engine. And he died at 32.
Yeah.
And what he achieved, he was the youngest Formula One winner, and that record stood for 44 years.
Yeah, in his own cars. Well, he didn't win Formula One in his own car. I think he was driving a Cooper.
Yeah.
But he built his own.
Fascinating. Anyway, thanks, Luke. I was lucky enough to be the custodian of this artwork at Noosa over the weekend. The owner's in the room here with me, and we had a great time up there. And I thought I knew a lot about it. I know a lot more about it now. And what was really energising was the impact that car had on 2-year-olds right through to 80-year-olds. Not only for its visual aesthetic, but for what it stands for. So I'll run through a few special things about this car. And you touched on it, Luke. Provenance is multi-tiered. It has influence on, sure, its value, but like any artwork, it's as much about the people behind it as the engineering output and the mechanical output, everything. So this car is part of the Holy Trinity. No doubt everyone knows that. You had the McLaren P1, the 918 Spider from Porsche, and the LaFerrari from Ferrari. 499 of those, 918 of the Porsche, and only 375 of these. This car technically is number 376. It's a story that was never really told, but it's a story that makes it, to your earlier example, more special than any other P1, I think. It was commissioned originally as chassis number 19 of 375 for a large collector in the Midlands of the UK, a racing provenance chap who had a significant collection, and it had what is documented as a thermal issue. And that a thermal issue to us is we take a jumper on or off. This thing caught on fire. Now I don't know if it was just
Let's call it what it is. The thing caught on fire.
It caught on fire. I don't know. There's no evidence of how far, but from that car to this car, there's not a single piece used. So by that point, when it had a thermal issue, they had shut down the production line in Woking. and they packed, literally everything was packed up. There's actually a couple of images of it on the wall there. And so this chap had such sway with the brand that he, I'm not sure if insisted is the right word, that I would like a new car. Thank you. So again, this is technically 376. They didn't even use the same VIN plate. The whole thing was built from scratch. And the top left, you can see there, they'd packed it up so long ago, they had to bring out all the blueprints, they had to dust out all the stuff. I think there's a slide there of the team. And Mark, you'd attested this. iPhones, well, any phones weren't allowed in working there, right? It's a clinical space. This is probably the only P1 that was visually documented in terms of the people and the process, because it was the last one. And in order for this chap to dust off all the tooling, the mandate from McLaren was you have to tick every box we can put on a list, and you have to pay for every one of those boxes. So this is the only non-MSO special ops car that was built with exposed carbon. It's quite dark in here, but if you get close to it, you can see that you'll be hard-pressed to find any metal on the car at all. The wheels, the brakes, the hinges, the windscreen wipers, but the rest pretty much is carbon fibre. And its brethren over here in white, the intricacy and the detail around the carbon wasn't so important because it was always planned to be painted. But the layup of all this carbon fibre, you only get one shot at doing it, was a significant achievement. And for the privilege, it was around $1 million Aussie dollars to have that done, along with the other upgrades. So this chap got a very special P1, and when we got our mitts on it, it had only 88 miles on the odometer, so it was preserved.
So they reset the odometer because essentially it was a brand new car.
It was brand new, not one piece
Really?
was brought across. Yeah, so it came with zero, and that 88 was just for maintaining that provenance for a service every year.
And then you drove it to Noosa for a car show, mate.
Yeah, in the rain. No, thankfully we put it on a truck, but it did a couple of Ks up there, and I think everyone was all the gladder for it, me included.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very, very special car. It is the highest spec. It's a stunning story. So the provenance folder is inches thick, and when we come back to provenance, it adds mystique. And again, I bring those parallels back to an artist. The most famous and valuable artworks are valuable because of often the lunatic that held the paintbrush. Yeah. And then the story, and if it can be proven, in this case, it's not hearsay or conversation. You know, the documentation is at hand.
So the thermal incident didn't necessarily affect the value of the car, did it?
No, it opened the door to
a whole new value level.
An off-book, one of one.
Yeah.
Yeah, the last ever. And the learnings over that roughly 2.5 years, Mark, production of the P1.
Yeah.
Everything was ironed out. So as a collector, we always talk about you often want the first or the last. This was the one after.
Because a similar thing happened with the F1 with, you'd know, Rowan Atkinson, the famous actor and comedian, who had an F1, and he also quite famously crashed it twice in his ownership. The first one was he ran up the back of another car, but it was small damage, got it fixed. The second one, he lost control in the wet, wrapped it around a tree and separated the engine from the chassis. Now, the entire car went back to McLaren, and they did the same sort of process as the P1. They rebuilt the car, and he kept the car and he continued to drive the car. And I think Mark cars were the new F1s. Were we talking about this? There were a couple of hundred quid. They were like 800 Aussie new or something, somewhere around there when they were built. And Rowan's car got fixed for the second time, and 11 years ago sold for $12 million US, despite the fact that he crashed it twice.
He should have crashed it again.
He should have crashed it again, you know. But Mark,
can I jump in there?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if anyone knows this story. I know one chap who does. There was a chap in our fund at Chrome Temple, and as a kid, he was first on scene. So Dean Wills owned the only. Am I allowed to tell this story? He owned the only F1 in Australia.
Yeah.
And it came off the road up here. You weren't driving it, were you?
No. But I worked with the guy that did.
You're right. It famously came up on North Head Road, right? And so this chap was a young aspirant car spotter. He went out there the day after with a shoebox and picked up all the gold flakes. If you guys are aware, there's gold there's gold plating in the engine bay of this thing to dissipate and reflect heat. So he has a shoebox, he showed me, of all the little hoses with handwritten elements on it, clips and broken plastic and carbon and all these gold dust.
If you know the story of Dean, he famously lost his license for driving his F1 on the road so fast that his wife said to him, I was very lucky to spend a lot of time with Dean. His wife said, "This is ridiculous, Dean. You're the CEO of a global company and you're losing your license for speeding on the road." So the first port of call that he did, he rang what is now Eastern Creek Raceway, which is now Sydney Motorsport Park. He rang them and said, "I want to hire your racetrack for the Sunday, every Sunday of every week for the next 5 years." And they said, "Well, we can't do that because we have racing. We're a race club. This is what we do." And Dean said, this verbatim to me, he said, "I don't think you know who I am. And this is what I want to do." What he wanted to do was basically have the freedom of driving his cars. Because back then he still had quite the collection. Anyway, that didn't work. His wife said, "Well, you need to build your own racetrack." And I don't know how many people here have been to the farm, which has now been renamed 70 North. But the farm is Dean's then wife saying, "This is ridiculous. Not only are you going to kill yourself, you're probably going to kill someone else," because they almost cleaned up a whole bunch of cyclists in the national park. He built that racetrack, and the racetrack was designed. Dean, being kind, wasn't a driver. He was an enthusiast, and the racetrack was designed, as he put it, to test whether or not the car was capable of doing what the marketing department said it could do. And it was very twisty, it was long, it had lots of corners, and it was amazing. But it was literally only like a lane and a half wide, and I can't imagine driving an F1 around there. But that car, then when it got crashed, I was sitting at Dean's table, and I said, "Dean, tell me about the crash." And he goes, "The young bloke that was driving it rings me and says, 'Dean, are you sitting down?' He goes, 'Well, I'm overseas, you've woken me up, it's 3 a.m, what's the problem?' 'I've crashed your car.' He said, 'Are you okay?' And the guy said, 'Yes, I'm okay, thanks for asking.' He said, 'Good, because you're fucking not when I get home.'" That car, I think, still holds the highest insurance claim in Australia. It was $1 million. They put that car on a plane, they flew it back to Woking, they rebuilt the car, Dean flew over and, in his questionable taste, convinced McLaren that his beautiful, it was like a dark grey, I think, from memory, wasn't it? It wasn't silver, it was like a dark grey. And it had silver wheels. He convinced McLaren to paint the wheels the same colour as the body. And McLaren said, "No, we're not doing that." And they had an ongoing fight over it. So much so that Dean said, "Meet me halfway." So they got the team to paint the left-hand side of the car, the wheels, one colour, and then the right-hand car. And they literally, Ron Dennis, him and the rest of the team, walked from one side of the car to the other to try and decide which one was a better looking wheel. And in the end, Dean won, and the wheels were painted the same colour as the car. But that certainly didn't affect the price of the car, right? Once that car was sold into Melbourne.
Yeah, the interesting thing with that is essentially, the McLaren F1 was the first car that is impossible to write off now. So you can't physically write one off because McLaren can fully rebuild that car for far less than what their car's potentially worth. Which just totally blows my mind.
I remember the first time I went to the factory, they used that as a sales tool. They said, the great thing about a McLaren is that it's a carbon tub and it's a front and rear aluminium subframe. So if you have a major impact in the front, we just unbolt the front and put a new one on it. I said, "Oh, is that all it takes? How much does that cost?" But they use, and Mark, you've been through this. In fact, Mark, weren't you party to a thermal event on another car?
You forgot your beanie.
To be fair, I've been party to quite a few stories.
Yeah. We've had a discussion already about the stories he's allowed to tell and the stories he's not allowed to tell.
Yeah, so we did have a thermal incident on another really, really nice spec Australian delivered Senna. And it was out on a drive day and we caught on fire. Yeah, it wasn't massive. Fire brigade put it out, that sort of stuff. The car made its way back to Sydney And yeah, there was a lot of work to do. This was right in the middle of COVID. So there wasn't anybody moving around anywhere or anything like that. So I spent a lot of time on FaceTime with engineering in the UK, try and work out what happened.
So you were actually figuring out how to rebuild this very new car essentially from the ground up.
Basically, yeah. And in the end, that's what was done. Yeah. So the original plan was it was going to go back to the UK. They had no, we're not going to do that. We'll send a team over. No, we can't do that. COVID. Okay, this is how we're going to do it. So basically, I sat down with them for a little while, just going back and forth, and just worked out what happened with the car. And then we got about $500,000 worth of parts to
and as I
go back
understand,
together.
you thought that it was way too hard to do, so you threw your young apprentice under the bus and said, "Here,
Yeah,
mate, go
correct.
fix this."
Correct. So it was at a point where a new team member had joined me. His name's Kai. He's over here tonight.
He's still there, ladies and gents.
He's still here, which is fantastic.
Yeah, still there.
So yeah, he's fantastic. He came to me 15, work experience, school.
15 years old.
15 years old.
That's illegal, Mark.
Oh, and then this starts me with another memory. Yeah, when you said Lara Bingle, I've got a story.
Yeah. I bet you have.
Yeah, Kai often likes to say to me, when you started with this particular company, not even doing what you're doing, just with this company, he was 1 year old.
Yeah, right.
That always hurts. So he came to me at 15, work experience, and then came back again, and wouldn't leave me alone.
And that car, despite its rebuild, still exists in the owner's collection, doesn't it?
So we threw him into it, and basically it was pulled right down, the front, the back, the whole lot, and Kai basically rebuilt it himself with me looking over his shoulder. And it was a beautiful car. It's a visual carbon fibre like this, not tinted.
Wow.
So it's a very high spec. That option in a centre was $300,000.
Wow.
To lay visual carbon because it needs to be done in such a time-costly way. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was a
So
$300,000
they
option.
had to redo the body and send a full carbon body back over to Australia for you to refit.
We save several panels, but yeah, because in a centre, a lot of it is quite modular, so it just unbolts. Yeah. And they laid new panels for it, and in this particular case, it had a lot of painting underneath, stripes, so forth, but it was under the clear. So I needed to take accurate measurements, send that to the UK so it could done properly, and line up when it got here.
Mate, that's a huge amount of work.
Yeah.
Chris, we've got another car here that's had a bit of a tough childhood, and it's sitting out the front here for different reasons. It didn't have a thermal incident.
Not yet.
Not yet, anyway. It's been around long enough. The McLaren SLR.
Yep.
One of the few McLarens, unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity to drive. But, mate, what's the story about the SLR?
I'll try and keep this short. I think I'm the prime market for a future SLR ownership because, Lex, you mentioned Holy Trinity, and a lot of people remember the Holy Trinity, I guess, as being a P1, the 918, and the LaFerrari. But for me, the OG Holy Trinity is the Carrera GT, the Ferrari Enzo, and that car there. So that car is a Trinity car, and it's had a hard life from the start even. But I don't think McLaren would be what it is today without it, because that car, although it's got a Mercedes badge on it, it has got a McLaren badge, it was built in Woking, and it was the first car or first production car to be built in the technology centre. And McLaren had an idea in terms of what they wanted to be. Mercedes did as well, and there was a bit of tug back and forth. But
They were somewhat divergent, weren't those two ideas?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. One wanted to create the ultimate supercar, the other wanted a Super GT or a sports Grand Tourer. But it had a lot of firsts, and you've regularly said to me, Lex, when you're talking about that car, the first that car has had. Can you remember what they are?
Carbon tub,
Yep.
active aero, and ceramic brakes.
Yeah.
on a production car.
Yeah, so it's got a heap of accolades, and then if you compare it to how the Enzos performed, how the Carrera GTs performed, especially in the last sort of like 6 to 10 years. I think there's a lot of appreciation for that car to come. I sold one recently, and there's a lot more noise around those cars, and I think people are starting to see the opportunity that's there. I mean, think about it. It's a collaboration between McLaren and Mercedes. You're never going to see that again. And with all those firsts and all the the sort of provenance and the history behind the car, and kind of McLaren's test on building a production series vehicle, I guess paved the way, in my opinion, to the MP4 12C and the cars that came after it.
It did, but arguably one of the interesting the story about the car is that there was such conjecture between what the car should be. There was such argument. McLaren wanted it to be a lightweight supercar. Mercedes wanted it to be a front engine GT to emulate the 300 SL. That was what the idea of those, and they are two very different cars, if you can imagine. But it's that story where, quite to me, the McLaren Mercedes SLR never actually lived up to what it could have been, because it was two halves. It was almost this and it was almost that. But that car, that creates the story of that car.
Well, that's right. It is its imperfections,
Yeah,
its glory.
yeah, exactly.
And like Chris rightly pointed out, it'll never be done again. You had these opposing forces,
Yeah,
the
but-
English,
but-
the German.
But despite that, it was successful. But even if it didn't reach its true heights, it did also, it spawned another car which did hit some big heights, which is the SLR Sterling Moss. I remember I saw one of those for the very first time. I was in Monaco, and they just had one randomly in a showroom on the street in Monaco, and it stopped me in my tracks. I mean, that car is exceptional. Everything about it, I love that car. And I think I did a bit of research that the last Sterling Moss sold for something like $4 million US. So its value is massive. Probably, well, clearly more than a standard SLR.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about vehicles' values and production numbers is massive in that, right? I mean, that original Holy Trinity, you've got the Enzo. They made 400 of them, like 399, one for the Pope, because he always seems to get one. So they only made 400 Enzos, and with a Ferrari, right? You've got all of the Ferrari history, all of the heritage that go with that car. McLaren is very, they've got a lot of heritage, but they're very early on in their road car history, right? Whereas Ferrari goes way, way back, so far lesser numbers. Carrera GT, there was about 1,200 of those made. Again, huge amount of history. Porsche, amazing sounding V10 in that car. But the SLR was in much higher numbers. I think, there's a lot of blue sky ahead of that car, and I said prime market. I'm the prime market for that car because I was 15 when that car came out. And I remember reading about it, I remember watching about it. All those three cars just amazed me. And I think as people get into their 40s and 50s, they'll remember those moments. And I think they'll start to look at the SLR differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to move a little bit further forward now in the chronology of McLaren. We're going to skip to some of the more modern cars. And I want to start with the 12C because that's kind of where my relationship with McLaren started. I had a pretty big role with McLaren in Australia at the time, and Mark, you and I had endless amount of phone calls about my car. If you remember the Matrix, when they're reading the screens and all those lines of data run down the screens, yeah, my car used to do that. I stopped one night in the city and the Matrix was happening on the screen, and I shit myself because I thought, this is it, I'm done. The Matrix is real. Morpheus is going to come out and say, you thought you were the one, but you ain't.
It was shot in Sydney, that
And
film.
I rang Mark, and then Mark and I had the after sales guy in the UK on speed dial. And the time difference, I'm taking a video of this thing, and I literally said on the video to him, mate, the car's doing this. If I disappear, tell my mum I love her. But we had lots of phone calls. We solved a lot of problems together, not to mention how to dry out a key. But I'm leading into a story because a lot of the issues weren't resolved by the time customers got their cars, because the 12C, remember, the 12C was McLaren's first production car. It was the first car that they'd built in volume. And the story goes that Ron did not want to take anything off the shelf. it had to be McLaren. Everything about it had to be McLaren. So this infotainment system, which they called Iris, was horrific. They could have just got a frickin' TomTom from Super Cheap Auto and it would have done a better job. No, he built an in-house Iris, and it couldn't be, it couldn't be that way, which is porch landscape. It had to be that way, because if you remember in a 12C, if you've ever been in one, there's very few buttons. The Iris sits in the middle and your air conditioning controls were on the door, which I thought was genius. No other car's done that. Much like no other car has ever put, with their paddle shifts, the ability to change up a gear with one paddle and then down a gear with the same paddle, because it's on a rocker switch, which came straight from their Formula One cars. So the Iris system was the main issue that we had early in the days. Mechanically, they were pretty sound. However, one of my first stories with Mark was him telling me about a black 12C out of Adelaide. You're not allowed to mention the bloke's name. And he did something to the car. What did he do?
So yeah, it was very early in the piece. I don't know. It must have been one of the earliest sold cars.
I had the sixth car in the country, and I think he had his car before mine. So it was super early.
And the gentleman was a good driver, and he enjoyed driving.
Was a good driver.
And he gave it heaps. Then it was too much on a Adelaide racetrack one day, and it ran out of room, and he ran into the
Room or
left-hand side.
talent?
A little bit of both. Well, it was definitely both. So yeah, the left-hand side of the car got quite heavily damaged. Again, car comes back to Sydney. Let's work through it.
Because this was also the time where you were literally the only tech in the country, weren't you?
Yeah, that was an interesting time, because we were the sole importer and distributor of the car, and obviously we'd sell here. And if there was an issue, all the customers had my personal phone number, so they could ring me at any time of the day, really. Whether it be Perth or.
By the way, if
South
you own a
Wales, Queensland,
McLaren, I actually am selling Mark's personal phone number.
It diverts directly to Kai's now. I was travelling a lot, just going to different cars, servicing bits and pieces. A lot of troubleshooting I try and do over the phone, obviously.
So you get a call about the black car?
Yeah, and it came to Sydney, had to. Yeah. Sitting with that, and then I spoke to the owner. How many people were in the car? No, it was just me driving the car. This is really odd. It was a side impact, but only the airbags for the left side had gone off, whereas only one person in the car, the driver's stuff should have gone off, yeah? So again, I sat down then with the car and went through all the systems. Oh, the seatbelt pretensioner has gone off only for the left-hand side. So then going through all the schematics and everything, working it out, and then discovered that this right-hand drive car was configured in the airbag system as a left-hand drive car. So it thought it had a left-hand driver.
Wow.
Yeah. Went and checked some of the other cars. These are the same. And then I went and checked some more cars. These are the same. So I was straight on to England. I had you need to go check some right-hand drive cars because this is what I've seen. Yeah. And no, that doesn't sound right. And yeah, they rang me in like the middle of the night saying,
oh shit.
And it became, it was basically a worldwide recall immediately,
On
but for
right-hand
right-hand drive
drive
cars. Yeah. But I mean, it's significant, but it's stuff you see across all sorts of manufacturers. Yeah.
So
I've been with Aston Martin for 23 years. I've seen some pretty wild stuff.
Yeah.
Porsche Master Tech for over 10 years. We've seen some pretty wild stuff.
You know, it's interesting
It's
you
nothing
say that
that's
because we're
out of the ordinary.
We're sitting here telling stories about McLaren, but it must be said that, you know, these problems aren't isolated to British marques.
No, not at all.
You know, German and Italian marques have their own stories to tell, and maybe on another Tyreside chat we'll endeavour to get into some of those. But so basically, you discovered a global recall for McLaren off the back of this.
Yeah.
So you basically saved thousands of people's lives. So we could say that
I hope
you're a
thousands
god.
of people wouldn't
You're
crash.
not the god, you're a god.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not the first time you've said this to me. Yeah? And I do appreciate the feedback, I really do.
All right, I'm going to move on for that because I'm conscious of time, but also You know, the thing about 12C, by the way, despite all of its early issues, it is the progenitor for every car that's surrounding us at the moment. And I think the three of us did a chat not long ago, and I said that the 12C to me was the car that McLaren wanted to build. It was, to me, that's the purest form of a modern McLaren, because that was their first car before the media got involved, owners got involved, and everyone else said your car should be this, the 12C. And I think in time it'll be seen as that. It'll be seen as the purest example of what that era of McLaren wanted to be for their first car, kind of like what Bruce wanted to do with the M6 GT.
So you buy one?
100%. All right, look, we're going to move forward. And I'm going to bring my old mate Geordie in because he's been sitting there so handsome and quiet. We're going to move right forward into the most recent McLaren. And if you're following social media, because it's been splashed everywhere, McLaren recently released their most recent car, the 788 HS. So I know through my knowledge of McLaren that the HS appendage, for want of a better word, has only existed twice before in McLaren history. There was 5 12C HS that were built for the American market only. There was a 650S HS that I think only did about 50 cars. Mate, what's the story with 788 HS?
Thanks, Luke. So 788 will be unique to 200 units globally, 100 coupes, 100 spiders. They are already completely allocated, so they got offered to VVIPs, fair enough. But very special. It sort of brings on the end of the 7 life cycle. So 720S, vastly regarded as the best production car that we've done. It's definitely got a cult following. I find every day just about I get people asking about U720S, and they're an excellent car. I'm sure many of you have driven them. 750 and 765 LT as well. 765 LT, that uniquely special, limited model, and I think that like 788 probably has a lot of that DNA as well. But with it, I guess what it's shown me is that on the release of something cool, the interest level just skyrockets with McLaren, and it's been special for me to see because I've been with the brand only a short time, about 15 months now, and I've been having this relationship with Artura, and then the second they've announced something special, the interest levels have just blown out of.
We had a chat just last week about this, and your Geordie's got on speed dial the area manager, a bloke by the name of Dan Hodgson, who is still with McLaren. He was one of the very first employees of McLaren Automotive, and he looks after our region. And you're on the speed dial with him going, mate, I need another car. I need another car, which is incredible given the price point is circa 1.1.
Yeah, 1.1, and then like a well-optioned car could get up to 1.5.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And they're all done.
They're all done, yeah.
Wow. So HS stands for High Sport. As I said, there was a High Sport car done for the 12C. If you can find me that car, then I will sell the houses that I don't own to get it, because that to me was pure McLaren. They did a 650S High Sport, which marked the end of the 12C 650S era and was the start of the 7 Series era, because the 720 came next. So 788, therefore, is the end of the 7 Series, which means there's a new series coming?
Yes, so all just whispers at the moment, but the next 5 years looks really exciting for the McLaren
He's
brand.
a sales guy, of course he's going to say that.
But next year you'll start to see things drip through, and some really unique, probably what more this space is all about. Just some really exclusive limited stuff at that real top end. Yeah. So it's exciting to see, and you probably would have seen some murmurings on socials just overnight on the release, or it's essentially a leak of McLaren revisiting a manual. You know, it'll be the first manual that they've done since an F1. And yeah,
A real manual?
Yeah. Not a manuale like the Italians have released.
With the 788, the excitement you're seeing, obviously when you produce something with true scarcity, a finite number, FOMO kicks in, one-upmanship, I want one, but I don't want my mate to have one. All these things where a multi-year series, you don't get that. Do you think the excitement you're seeing is this, I touched on it earlier, this kind of bookend, be it knowledge or speculation in the market? You know what, this is the last V8, maybe last of anything without a hybridised drive in it, European emissions, all these factors we know driving it. Is there that scramble to have the last one? Because we've seen that with so many.
It's created a real buzz, because not only that, I don't know if anyone knows the story around 750. As of March last year, they were unable to be complied in Australia due to regulations. They weren't able to be complied here. But 788 is going to have a unique compliance. So a lot of the original chatter was that we weren't able to have that car in the country because of the compliance issue. But there is a unique compliance coming just for that vehicle to have it. So it's pretty special that it's even coming to Australia, period.
There's another car, the final car I wanted to talk about, which kind of then fits into the hypercar, which is the third car of the McLaren, let's call the McLaren Trinity, because obviously it is the W1, which we were involved with last year with the launch. We were down in Melbourne with that car. Everyone's seen the photos of it. Everyone's seen the videos of it. I've seen it in real life. It's significant. You know what? Like most McLarens, they're much better in the metal than they are when you first see the photo. The W1 is an exceptionally good-looking car. Chris, modern hypercars, W1, has that car to you got collectability vibes?
The attitude of towards these kind of cars in Australia has changed massively in the last 10 years. And I think, you know, I arrived here in 2015 and there wasn't anywhere near the hypercars and performance cars that you see on the roads here now. And we just got back from Noosa and you've got, you know, Koenigsegg Jesko up there and some really, really rare stuff. I'm interested to know where the collectability is going to shift, because, you know, you've got two P1s here. You've got the white one, which is a stunning car, but when you park that thing next to it, it's, you know, I feel sorry for this car.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it blows my mind. And this car's exposed red carbon, and Lex has talked all about why that car's special. So I think what we're going to see with W1, in my opinion, if I was to forecast it, I think we're going to see some crazy specs. I think the cars that are going to be most collectible, because we're seeing it in like the F80, where you've got mismatched driver's seats, you've got crazy one-of-one paint combinations, limited, super tailor-made. And I think the guy, if, you know, we fast forward 15 years, the guy who's got the most valuable W1 will be the guy who's just nailed the spec, who's just gone, wow, that's it. And when we bring cars to market, you know, the spec means so much. And I can have two cars that are the same year, same Ks, but one can just be a color combo that just goes off, and the demand is tenfold.
But it's a big call to make when you're speccing your 5-6 million Aussie car. It's a big spec. It's a big call to make, to go, yeah, stuff it. I'm going to go all out here. I'm going to go green with blue, with red, with orange, because you think that that's going to be something. But funnily enough, we were talking before about, and my comment was, look at the 355, all-time classic, gorgeous. Everybody loves the 355, but a red with tan versus a blue with cream or a green with cream or something, you know, you're kind of going, well, red with tan now is almost boring. I want something that no one else has. And I wonder if these owners are starting to spec these cars similarly. But I don't know, you're putting your money down and you're going, yeah, I want blue interior on a yellow car, please. That's a big call.
I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but I think if you talk 355, they were spec to be driven, and they knew the minute they drove it out, it halved, and I was going to drive it to zero. Yes, yeah. Now, again, good or bad, I think people are speccing them as an investment. And so hopefully, I think the lion's share of them will be delivery miles,
But
which is
didn't
what it's rare to find one of them delivery miles because they're all driven.
But didn't they used to say that Rossa Corsa as a Ferrari colour was resale red?
Yeah, it's still the case.
Nah. Why would you buy a red Ferrari? God, you get something that no one else has. Get a silver like mine, or a blue or a green or something like that, you know?
I knew there was an angle.
Yeah, there was an angle.
But what another interesting point I think we're going to see in the near future is you saw the demand for the special series. You can't get enough of them. Yet where the daily driven accessible supercars are becoming harder and harder to sell for all the marques. And I'm not sure if you guys have seen in the press recently Porsche, who've had their own struggles. They're the golden child of sports cars. All the cream, and let's face it, they're all businesses at the end of the day. All the cream is made in the scarce stuff that they can write their own number. So I wouldn't be surprised to see McLaren, all these brands, and Porsche have come out and said it. You know what? We're actually we're going to focus more, take a leaf from the Ferrari book. The lesser models keep the lights on, and all the creams in the truly scarce stuff. So we may see less of these cars on the road, and more of these investment grade assets tucked away.
Which is a little bit like what you alluded to about the overnight leak of this manual McLaren coming out. Like if you've listened to us well enough tonight, you can probably take a half a guess of what that car might be, because I have mentioned the car that it's based off. And I think that a lot of brands now are doing that. They're saying volume cars compared to Toyota and whatever, these are the ones that aren't selling. What we can do is we can make very limited run cars really special. I think in our group chat the other day I chucked in there, the first manufacturer to do a mid-engine V8 manual rear-wheel drive is going to kill it. He's absolutely going to kill it because it's the complete antithesis to everything else that everyone's building. So we might find that McLaren goes down this path. Do you think that's a point?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I think that they're certainly not going to be bringing out the same numbers even in their volume as they did with previous models, but all I can say is the future's so exciting. Like just the chatter that I've heard, and you probably saw like months ago they're going to dabble into SUV as well. There's a lot of good stuff coming for the brand.
I was going to just touch on that vehicle spec. That's a very interesting point because we have obviously very limited edition Elva cars. Yeah, we look after 4. I think we look after 4. Yeah.
So the Elva that you don't know if you haven't seen an Elva, it was a very unique car.
Open top car,
cockpit.
no roof whatsoever.
What chassis was it built off its own chassis or was it built off a?
No, it was basically the 720 type.
720, right?
Yeah. Obviously all carbon fibre. We have one spec in visual, non-tinted. The one I'm thinking of, well, you've probably all seen the very light blue with red, very out there.
And the guy that can't see over the steering wheel when he drives it.
One you wouldn't have seen because it only gets trucked to and from us once a year, and I've driven it around the block 3 times. So delivery kilometres. It's a beautiful car. Liquid silver, brushed titanium, carbon fibre inserts here and there, which are then lightly brushed over with that liquid silver paint. So it's carbon fibre, but it has like an overspray of the silver, and it's amazing. It's white with orange speck. Yeah. It wouldn't have been seen in public hardly ever. Yeah, hardly ever.
So thank you, first of all, to all of you for coming along. I hope we didn't bore you to tears. As Lex said at the start, thanks for your patience. It's the first time we've done this. We will grow. We will get more interesting, I'm sure. And we hope to do more of these for you guys as members and the like. So thank you. Thank you to Mark for coming along, and also Geordie, who's been nervous all night. He hasn't slept for 3 nights. This is the first time he's been seen in public. Thank you guys for coming along, and thank you for also keeping some of the stories to yourself, especially
Bring
about
a couple
me.
of cars, and thank you, Luke, too.
Cheers. Thank you, ladies and gents. Wonderful. Thank you very much.